All right, so the first thing is when you go to Excel, this is that you only have to do once per computer. So if you're using the school computer lab, you have to check this every time. If you're using your personal computer, once you've done it, it's done it. And this is to make sure that you have the tool pack installed. So go to File, Options, okay, and then down here to Add-ins. And then we want to press Go. Now, I already enabled it on this one, but you want to make sure Solver add-in is checked. And for later in the semester, go ahead and make sure Analysis Toolpak is checked as well. But the one we care about right now is Solver. Now, if you have a Mac instead of a PC, there are slightly different instructions, and I can never remember them. What I recommend is literally Googling Excel Mac Solver and installing, and it will pop up right, like it won't even be a web page, it will just give you instructions right on Google, okay? Because it's a very common thing to ask. All right, so you don't actually have to enter very much into Excel. A lot of it is just so that you remember what everything is, okay? We're gonna do the ones you guys just did. Let's do the minimize. So we want to minimize, would help if I could spell right. You don't actually have to write that part, that's just to help you. And we'll come back for the objective function. And then you want to know what your variables are going to be. And in this case, we call them A and B. All right. Now, the variables aren't actually going to be in these cells that are called A and B. They're going to be in these empty cells underneath them. Okay? So every time you're actually plugging in a variable, remember we're going to use those empty cells, and then Excel will fill them in. So now I'm going to go over here to my objective function. The biggest thing you have to remember is you have to be using the equation toolbar, which means you need to start everything with an equal to sign. Okay? So our objective function was to minimize 2a plus 3b. So our objective function is equal to 2 times the empty A cell plus 3 times the empty B cell. 2a plus 3b. Now currently there's nothing in those cells, so as soon as I hit enter, it's going to say 0, because 2 times 0 plus 3 times 0 is 0. But that will change. Okay. Now I had 3 constraints, okay, and the non-negativity conditions. Those are separate. The first constraint, the left-hand side was a plus b, so equal to a plus b. It was a greater than or equal to, and I'm just going to do a greater than or equal to remind myself, and the other side was 3. So that represents our first constraint. Now I do the next one. This is equal to 2 times a plus b, and it was greater than or equal to 4. And our last constraint was equal to a plus 3 times b, greater than or equal to 5. All right. Now that all these are in, and notice those should all be 0 because the variables have not been filled in, up here at the top, press the Data tab, and there should be an analysis spot that says Solver. We'll press on that. This is movable, by the way, to get it out of your way. So set objective function. With the cursor in this, you're going to go select that box that you plugged your objective function into. It's a minimize in this case. By changing variable cells, push this down for a second, I'm going to highlight those 2 empty variable cells that I used as my variable. Pull it back up. Subject to the constraints, I'm going to add constraints. You can actually add them all at once, as long as they're all either less than or greater than. So as long as they're all the same, you can add them all at once. So the cell reference is the left-hand side. I select them all. In this drop-down menu, I'm going to pick the greater than or equal to. And then over here, this is the right-hand side, and I'm going to select them all. And I press OK. If you had some less thans and some greater thans, you do one and then do another. Okay, but this box right here, make unconstrained variables non-negative, that's your x, y, or a, b, or whatever it is greater than or equal to 0. So in this case, we want to make sure it's checked. And then lastly, select solving method. In this drop-down menu, you want to do simplex method. Okay, then you press solve. We're going to deal with sensitivity next time, which we'll do something there, but for right now, we're just going to push OK. Notice things are no longer 0. This is telling me that A should be 2 and B should be 1. It gives you an objective function value of 7. And here's your constraint. So we see that the first constraint is binding. There's no slack or surplus. As is the third constraint, no slack or surplus. But there is a little bit of surplus on the second constraint. We made one more than we had to. Okay? All right.